microphone if you guys want some ASMR of me eating these fries.
Hell yeah, man. I want to build Mad Party. It actually, like, low-key looks pretty fun. Let's do playing it right now.
Hello everybody, Kirk Dubes Next Dubé here, and Players Cup 2 is well underway, and UNDNTD got together discussing the format and came to the conclusion that energy denial might be a way to go. So after these discussions took place, we reached out to Chance Swafford, a member of the community, to discuss a little bit of the options that they've been looking at in terms of energy denial and unique approaches to the meta. So we're bringing to you, with our first video drop as UNDNTD, a community spotlight of Chance Swafford, some games with Torkoal V, as well as another special deck that we wanted to display on our first video to you. Thanks for watching. Peace, love, and hugs. Stay sweet.
Super interested in the list that Lay posted, that Dragapult Clefable. I think that's really, really interesting to be able to like Clefable and then Yellgrunt, or like Clefable Hammer, like just a Tornadus. Like that seems like the best thing you can do for that matchup, to like just be able to continue attacking.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think Dragapult is really good too, and I don't think that. I think you can maybe solve it Tornadus a couple of ways. Like, it definitely has some weaknesses, energy removal probably being the biggest one, but there's just no. There's no good like fighting counter Pokemon. Like if Throw did like one more damage or something, I think you could just be splashing counter gains and stuff, and like Rosa, and you would be fine.
Counter gain,
but there's just not there's no easy way.
You can do Karate Belt, because with Karate Belt and Throw,
Yeah.
you don't even need to play a fighting energy, which is super interesting.
Right.
But yeah, it does not enough. I mean, doing 240 is pretty good for like a single psychic.
I worry too about spending time on Inteleon, because it just seems that Pikarom is only getting more and more popular again. It just feels like a waste. It's good too. I am surprised. I saw a list with Crushing Hammers this morning that I meant to try, but I was working.
I think I know what list you're talking about. I looked at that this morning on Twitter.
I don't remember if it was a ban ADP tournament though.
I don't think it was. I think it was just like a.
I don't think it was either. Here, let me pull it up. I know I liked it.
I want to try that list a lot. I've been thinking about the Scoop Up Net Jirachis too. I think that could be good, but I definitely think Pico with Crushing Hammer is like what.
Oh yeah, he's playing this Lycanroc thing.
Oh, the energy denial one.
I was reading more into it, and he said that it ended up being a bad decision. He thought the GX attack did something else.
Oh, I see.
He thought
it did like energy 50 times in your discard, right?
Yeah. So I think he regrets it. But that does lead to an interesting conversation on that card's viability, at least as far as its ability is concerned. Clefable might just end up being better just because it's a non.
What is the ability? I don't know what it does.
I think when you evolve, you discard an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon, or it might be any of their Pokemon, but it just gets discarded. Whereas Clefable obviously puts it on top of their deck, which I think in the purpose that you want to serve is just as good. It's just about
I think everything Clefable gets in nets and stuff like that is probably just too good to try to play something else.
And like if the
also,
attack
I love Clefable. It's one of my favorite Pokemon. Let's play it.
Let's do it.
I think there's an Inteleon Clefable list floating around somewhere.
Gengar? Like Gengar or Mimikyu?
Inteleon Clefable.
Oh, yeah, that would be pretty good. That would probably be the best. And yeah, in fact, if I wanted to build an Inteleon deck, I think that's what I would want to do for sure.
We can work on that later, maybe. I think that would be fun. I like Inteleon Energy Denial, like you were saying, Dustin. I think that's really good. Pika with hammers, I think, is like pretty decent. Hopefully we figure out this Torkoal thing. I
don't think the hammers are good. It's frustrating that the format it makes it difficult to tell. Like, it doesn't feel genuinely wrong, but I've thought about it pretty hard, and I'm pretty sure it's wrong in all these decks.
Oh, just adding in hammers?
Because the idea is that, and this is my logic anyways, it could be wrong. The idea is that, it's really just the first energy attachment that really, really matters. That's really all you're trying to do with the Crushing Hammers for the most part. Because sort of after that, it doesn't matter. Like with Eternatus, it does to a greater extent, but I think for the most part, you're trying to get the watercolor off ADP's board, and you're trying to knock off Eternatus's first energy, and it doesn't matter in the other matchups.
Yeah.
And so it's only this first one, and so if you don't see them on their first turn, it just doesn't matter whatsoever, and they're just entirely useless. Like especially with all the patches and stuff like that in ADP, I just don't think Crushing Hammer is the answer people seem to think it is to stop Alter Creation.
It's
And
almost
there are not, and that's the thing. The thing is that there just aren't better cards. Like it doesn't feel wrong to include them because none of these decks are missing things when they fit them. But that I just don't think it's right still.
yeah, everyone. I mean, we really just want the wait and see hammer. That's what we wish it were.
Right.
It seems like in order for the hammers to be consistently effective throughout the game, and I think the point you bring up is perfectly correct, you would need to like pair it with Omastar or some sort of other additional denial to where that strategy is irrelevant. I mean, because otherwise, to your point about Turbo Patch and Metal Saucer, and then like just they always seem useless against fire decks, the hammers, birds excluded because they're attaching lightning and water, but like a Centiscorch with 6 energy does not give a if you remove one of them, like really.
And that's the thing too, and again against Eternatus it's really good if they go first and you go second, but if you go first and they go second, it might not even matter if you get it.
Because they could turbo
right, and then similarly too, I played a game, and again, I'm sure it would not always go this way, but I played a game against like Eternatus hammers, and they hit 3 for 4, and I still beat them. And that probably happens, a good percentage of the time. Like you're not even guaranteed these wins sometimes when you are hitting high on your hammers.
I think hammers are good if you're like trying to fix your Eternatus matchup. If you're a deck that beats like the whole format, but Eternatus gives you a huge problem, 4 hammers probably solves it enough to where you're like very well positioned in the meta. And I think that's like what Pico was trying to do with the hammers. Is like I feel like they had a pretty good matchup against most of the format. ADP probably might be a little bit sketchy, and Eternatus isn't amazing because they can just one-shot you so easily. But with the hammers, you like slow them down enough to like make the matchup like close enough. That's kind of how I saw it. You're just trying to fix like maybe 1 or 2 matchups, not like an essential piece of the deck.
Oh, I also think that's a good, great point. Exactly, kind of to segue into Torkoal, like that, I think hammers make sense in there because you're removing 2 with the Torkoal also. So like you have them in there for the early pressure, which is why they're good in kind of any deck, and then later they remain good because you're like you could be removing 3 in a turn, which obviously I really like the idea of Torkoal, and I'm dying.
With all of the talk about Torkoal, I thought it'd be a good idea to message someone who I've been talking with for a while, even before the start of Undaunted, named Chance Swafford. He is a player who showed me a really, really cool rogue deck that I won't mention just yet, but also somebody who finished really well in the Hexer tournaments with his own Torkoal creation really before anyone else. And so I thought it'd be great to get him on and just have him coach for a little bit and kind of see if he could show us really how these decks work, because we weren't entirely convinced at first, but knew this energy denial like we talked about would be pretty good in the format.
I'm gonna put the Victini V in. Let's see what we can cut for it and see if any other cards have to change based on that. So blink.
What if we just play 3 volcanic?
If you don't,
no way, right? You gotta collect those puppies.
like you do auto lose to Bronzor if you're not playing the Cram. Like that's definitely a cut I was thinking of. I was like, if I go against the Luke Metal that's playing this one card, but I found so many more uses for Cram that I didn't expect to find. The beat catch was so good sometimes.
What about this Scrapper?
Scrapper was specifically for Luke Metal. When they would put on the
goggles.
The goggles.
But
so
I think in like matchups like that too, I think the energy denial is just as good, right? Like you're not two-shotting them or whatever, but you're just denying them energy at the same time. So I think
right.
And plus, like you're saying, like Luke Metal not as popular right now. I think it's probably fine. I would like to find space for another power plant at some point.
When I played in the tournament, the previous one, the finals was ADP and Luke Metal. So I was, just expecting people to pick it up. They're like, oh, yep. And it's a pretty simple deck to play as well.
All right. Ooh, I've got the hammer in hand. Attach that water. It's going away. It's gone.
I think if you hit greens here, you're doing really good. Ideally, you just hit greens Welder off both his Poke here and you're set. But...
Yep.
A metal, jeez. Great top deck. I still want to see what I get. Of course, here's an example where the balloon, would have been great to greens for the scrapper and disrupt him that way, but oh well.
No, you want that ADP in the active. You want to hammer off that energy. You want him to eventually get into the active, and then you want to use your 120 attack to discard his water, and he can literally like never ultimate red. Like he needs to do a lot. He needs to hit the patch and then energy switch, and then at that point, like he's trying to power up a ADP that can never knock out a Torkoal in one shot.
Yeah. Do I? I think.
No. I think you go for the greens for the energy spinner or something like that, so you can discard one of those energies. I wouldn't get rid of that heat because that that's so rough.
Ah, man, come on. We're good.
Boss is really, really good because you can chase down the energy in this matchup.
Such a good card. All right. Yeah. Well, this is how we learn. All right.
Yeah. I usually spinner and then waste off one of those energy. I think you're gonna get the energy. You could grab another green. Yeah, research is actually pretty good.
Actually, if I get research, I don't want spinner because I'll just have a bunch of fires in hand. Because I can get the three.
Go Hearth.
Yeah.
Hearth.
You don't need the spinner anymore. I was saying before you discarded the boss.
Yeah, I totally agree. But what if I get switch research so that way next turn I just attach switch research? Like
you don't necessarily.
No, that's correct. I think that's right.
What do you think, Chance?
You're saying switch for the following turn because he's going to retreat into the ADP and try to use alter? Yeah, absolutely.
And then I just because I have this fire in hand or this heat in hand specifically,
right?
I think this just gives me the perfect hand for next turn. It's everything I could possibly want, especially if he comes up with if he somehow gets the ultimate ray off, and if not, then great, super.
Something else to remember in this matchup when you're using the flare starter is if you don't have another energy in hand, sometimes it's better to attach the third energy to the Volk off the flare starter. So that way you can either retreat out of it if you hit the welder or something like that, or you can actually use the use the high heat blast for 110. Like attaching 3 to the Torkoal isn't always correct. In this scenario, it's perfect.
Yeah, because I have the energy. But yes, I totally see what you're saying. Yeah.
I like that a lot as well. Point. I think that's really smart.
So he hit the E switch, which is fine. I made him use it. Yeah, this seems like great. If he comes up with only the 2 energy in play, I mean, he might hit a saucer, which I'm sure they will because it's ADP.
And that is totally fine. And if he would have attached that the water turn 1, you could have gone in with a hammer off that greens and try to disrupt that way because ADP is really only using two water at this point. So
yeah, they're really cutting down. Ooh, he's digging for it.
I like this matchup.
Now he's gonna get another. He's down 3 swing.
He's gonna go. This is so perfect because he's gonna go in with that altar. You're gonna discard all of his energy, and then I mean it'd be great if you still had that boss because then you could chase down the Zacian and one shot him. Because you don't really care about 3-shotting the ADP. Like you want to chase down the Zacians.
I don't think
this is awesome.
Nope. Yeah.
Nope, you don't need it. You want him to go through 2 Torkoals and a Volk.
I really like that.
You don't want to put down that other Volk.
He played a Dedenne. I'm less inclined to play the plant, but I mean he could want another. No, it's in his discard pile, so it's not actually really doing anything.
Yeah, I think you're fine because he's probably going to try to go for Viridian or something like that. I think you're fine. This is just so good because now he needs saucer energy switch, or
and then he just
leaves that in the active and you hit 240 on it. which you get to clean up with a cram later in the game, or use your great catcher to bring it up after you
sure.
knock out 2 Zacians and win game. And that's actually how you get, how you can actually win with Torkoal's 120, because taking 2 shots on Dedenne is not great. All right, that is where Scrapper helps.
That's okay. All right, now we're seeing the benefits of the Scrapper.
So-
I get it.
So you're not one-shotting him, but he's not one-shotting you either. You have that 280 now.
And he's down so many switch, and it's now that that's not a charm, he can't attach
Right.
an air balloon to get out. So he'll have to find his
Yeah.
fourth
So
switch.
you just
Let's start.
power. Yeah. I mean, you're chilling. You're absolutely chilling.
I wonder if I get a cram, like so I could.
I
It looks like
I don't think you
might
show
need to-
him the cram. I don't think you show him the cram yet.
Yeah, okay, yeah. There's value to that for
There's-
sure.
Because you don't want him to Mawile your cram onto the bench right now.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, Mawile is something very good to play around. I could have even. No, it's good to keep
You
the
could-
quick ball.
Yeah.
Could have discarded
yeah.
the volcano. Technically. Like it's
Right.
not that big of a deal if they Mawile. That's another thing that plant stops, which is interesting.
And go back to Frank's point with the Hearth. Hearth also is another discard out to discard the volcanoes that end up in your hand, so Mawile, so you can get away from the Mawile.
Oh yeah, that's really
So
cool.
having that Hearth down.
Fourth switch.
So that's 4th switch. So what he's gonna have to do is you're gonna attach again.
Yeah.
All right.
Ooh.
So
That's good.
I
Blade
would-
or because he
No,
can
no, no.
air.
So
If I
he-
like, what's up?
So he has that big charm on there, right? He could scrapper it off and I guess balloon himself, but you're about to discard 2 of his energies off that Zacian. He needs to hit a saucer on that Zacian on the bench to even attack, because he's down
Yeah.
all 4 switch, right? Or all 4 switch. So I think you hold the boss and just keep powering that up, because even next turn, you can attach to the Volk and knock out the Zacian.
Right.
If he
the
knocks
Volk,
if
for
he
sure.
knocks this out.
This
Right,
is
like,
so
he's
good.
Yeah, he'd have to attach, retreat, and like saucer before he does that, or Scrapper. Scrapper would be a great play because he can then. Well, no, if he Scrappers his charm to attach balloon, he dies.
Yeah,
He can't do
right.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, he's
So
in
this
Trevor's-
is look at this. You pretty much won this game. And you
Do I-
notice like what
Why not?
have you played for supporters? You played a research and a greens, right? Like this deck, once it has a Torkoal setup, it's just so stable. When you're playing against a deck that relies on 3 energy attacks.
So you bossed
I
the
did-
Zation here, right?
I just hold the boss. I just take
You-
knockout.
I think. Well, no, because if you boss the
Is he out?
Zation on the bench, he can't attack you next turn. So you're saving yourself from getting knocked out. Whereas if you knock out the active,
But I
could
think you're
saucer it.
okay with getting knocked out. Okay,
Alright,
just
no,
good.
alright.
Because he discarded a boss, right? So if he uses that boss, he maybe has a great catcher left. We didn't really see it in the deck, because he could just start trying to stall and build up stuff on the bench and then come attack you.
This was the list that we were provided from Chance, and all of us were really immediately interested. And thanks to some games that Britt had played very, very early on, as soon as we shared it in the chat, Britt had recognized that he was interested in a 4th quick ball, because he found that he was struggling to find some of his pokes setting up. Like, even though you can greens for it turn 1, like he kind of felt that he needed it like repeatedly throughout the game, and that makes a lot of sense. So the first cut that Britt made was actually cutting Crystal from 2 to 1. And then when we began talking to Chance today, Chance liked adding the 4th quick ball and had actually come to that same conclusion in his own testing while we were talking about it ourselves. But then made the very good point that instead of cutting a second Crystal, cut a Heat, because effectively, even though Heat's very good and it helps you tank a lot of hits, Crystal is essentially, at 3 fire energy. So instead of cutting 3 fire energy from your deck like this, just cut 1 from your deck by cutting the Heat. And then cutting the Heat instead of the fire, because the 2 crystals that remain and the spinners, of course. So we kind of landed here for a couple of games. And then as we began to talk further, we expressed interest in adding in a Victini V, primarily because due to some similar experiences we had in the V-Birds deck, just being a greens welder deck, Victini is able to take a lot of easy KOs that you don't have to invest as many energy as you do into a Torkoal, maybe late game. It can also help you get back into the game with spreading flames. Let's say you kind of were on the ropes a little bit, which happens with green decks, and you need to stamp and just reestablish yourself on the board. But also, a good strategy against Torkoal is to just get more energy attached than Torkoal can handle. So we see that in the likes of Mewtwo decks. We see that in the likes of Centiskorch decks, where a Centiskorch will be like, okay, I have 6 to 8 energy on me. I'm one-shotting you. I do not care that you're discarding 2 of my energy. And Victini is a pretty good punish for that, because you could welder, attach, and then the opposing Centiskorch VMAX does not need a lot of energy attached for you to hit that one-hit KO. So overall, just a really good balance out to the deck that we're trying out. With not that many games under its belt, and in the few that we've played, it hasn't come up yet. We haven't needed it to. So with that being the 61st card, we looked at what we'd like to cut. The first thing that I thought of was the Scrapper. We're like, okay, let's go in with it. And then we realized that if a Zacian attaches even a big charm, that Torkoal can't actually pick up the KO. And then Chance had originally liked the Scrapper for Luke Metal to get rid of the goggles. All of that is very viable. It's also good to get rid of air balloons. That way you can boss something up, stamp it. You know, this deck likes to be at a slow pace, and I think Scrapper fits well with that engine. So the most recent cut we made was like, okay, well, we want the Victini to try that, so let's cut the Research. Because even though obviously it's an extraordinarily good card, most of the time we're playing Welder, we're playing Greens, we're playing Boss, and the Research is just sort of a backup, like, all right, let's continue to get cards in my hand. I can't find any of the other supporters. It may or may not be the correct decision, but this is where the list stands currently after today's testing. So Chance, anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm definitely excited about these changes. Like you were talking about the quick ball, you know, I think full on consistency is the way to go. Heat energy is awesome for going up against Zacian, so they can't one-shot you when you have that cape on, but I don't think it's something you need all the time. I think bringing back the crystal was really important because that Cramorant, even though it was originally put in to prevent, you know, Bronzong from stopping you, Cramorant has came in handy to snipe the bench more times than I can count already, and having that extra 3 energy from that crystal has been crucial.
What was that play you did against Centiskorch?
Yeah, so in the tournament I played against 2 Centiskorch, and I milled both out because I was able to boss up. One time it was a double ult, and the other time was an Oranguru, both having 2 retreat. And they had a Centiskorch out that had 7, 8 energy on it, and I brought it to the bench, stamped them down low, and then basically used Cram to snipe off the Centiskorch on the bench and discarding 8 energies at once, and then just kind of ran away with the game from there because they couldn't build up another Centiskorch enough to one-shot a Torkoal, and I just discarded any energy they put out and discarded all 12 to 14 energy within the game and just milled them out of the game.
That was one thing about this deck that I really actually found interesting too, is like a lot of the games you're actually more concerned about just getting rid of their energy than you are actually knocking them out sometimes. Like with your ADP game, Dustin, like the one play where we were attacking and they had the big charm on and like you weren't knocking them out, and like that concerned me for a second until I realized you were right, that they either had to hit like a metal patch and hard retreat for 2, or do something crazy to get an attack on you, and because you just the energy denial with the Torkoal is so strong that you can just like literally sit there with a Torkoal and like gust up targets that even if you're not knocking them out, just like getting rid of the energy on board, which is like super cool. So I thought that was like an interesting aspect of the deck, and it's kind of like a different way of thinking about playing the game that I like.
Yeah.
It's not
denying the ult ray from ADP is so huge, because why, of course, the GX attack makes the card, right? But it is definitely boosted by the fact that the next turn, oh hey, I just did this amazing GX attack. Now I think I'll completely power up anything that I have. But by Steam crushing that away, now there's Zacian, maybe they have an energy on it from an early Saucer, from an early Intrepid Sword, but now all of their attachments are crucial. And even though they may come up and one-hit KO the Torkoal, which they can't if you have heat energy and K. But if they do, if you respond with a Volcanion, another Torkoal, they don't have like a guy just powered up. They're completely dependent on their metal saucers. And if they take that first KO and you stamp to 3, you're really, really putting them on the ropes as much as possible.
Yeah,
which is great.
One thing too about this deck, and I think we're like moving forward with this deck. I definitely want to get some more games with it. I might play in like the Hagster or something with it. I can definitely see us making some changes to it in the future as well. I think like the biggest thing, Chance, that you said was like once you have 2 Torkoals powered up, like you pretty much just like win most scenarios. And like so I think the biggest thing for this deck is just like getting set up. And so I think if we were to like optimize the list to a point where you just like turn 2 Flare Starter every turn, or just like hit, Welder Torkoal like so consistently that's pretty much what you do, and kind of maybe like cutting around like might sound dumb at first, but like I think the energy denial of Torkoal might be strong enough to where you don't need 4 hammers or something like that. Which is, I don't know, that's a pretty hot take, but because I mean the hammers are really good against like that early game like you were talking about. But I don't know, I feel like if the deck is good enough to have Torkoal's energy denial just be like such a heavy focus, like we might move it forward in a position where it's just so super consistent, like get 2 Torkoals charged up. So I'm really excited to see like where this deck goes like in the future, like how it performs at tournaments like moving forward, now that Chance you were able to kind of teach us a lot about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this deck has a lot of room for improvement. I decided to go with the green build mainly because you have ADP in the meta. Just getting around your big Torkoal, your 280 HP Torkoal, by just bringing up a Dedenne, a Crobat, and Eldegoss didn't seem great to me. So I wanted to build something that they had to push through. Not to mention it's fire, so like they have to bring up Zacians to try to attack through it, and you just one-shot the Zacians. I think that there might be a spot for a 3rd boss, so you can chase that energy a little bit easier. It is kind of the reason I have that Great Catcher in there, but Great Catcher is not necessarily always going to work in every matchup, right? It's a dead card against your Eternatus, and things like that. So I think testing a 3rd boss might be worth it as well.
Yeah, and I think that's like just the thing about deck building, right? Is just like you kind of like optimize your list to after you play like so many different games against like so many different decks, right? Like so for instance, like the Great Catcher is like really good against like Pika and Mewtwo and Blacephalon, but if you find yourself oftentimes enough to where like that Great Catcher isn't like the deciding factor for those matchups, but a boss would be better, and maybe some other areas that you might be struggling, like that's how you make those changes. But it's just like every deck just comes down to like playing like games and games and games against every single thing in the format, or at least for like untested like rogue kind of decks like this Torkoal would be. So yeah, I definitely can see that as an option, and I hope this video really is able to like highlight this deck and get it out to enough people who are able to like do their own testing and come to their own conclusions, right? So I think hopefully by getting this out there and maybe sifting it in the meta, I can see it evolving into a new archetype or a really cool style of deck once enough people get their hands on it.
Yeah, but, I think energy denial, possibly greens builds can do a lot in the future. Just ADP. One of the big things is just taking those 2 KOs. Greens prevents that, and then all these big attackers require 2 to 3 energy, and Torkoal denies that. So I think we could see other decks like this in Talion.
Yeah.
Well, Chan, thanks so much for sharing this with us. This is definitely something that piqued our interest immediately, especially in its uniqueness. Like we're always wanting to play something that's outside of the most common decks, but you definitely have something here with what seems like a lot of viability. It looks like you put a lot of thought into this. So yeah, man, like great work. This is a really, really fun deck to play for anyone who, what I like about it, it's kind of like, it's like, I love an energy denial that can also be aggressive, so it kind of checks both of those boxes. So just overall, like tons of fun to play. So
yeah, and Chance, you have another deck?
After what ended up being a pretty easy game, we decided to call it quits there and just finalize the edits that we ended up making to the deck. I wanted to give enough time in this video to allow Chance to really showcase a cool deck that no one has ever seen before. And we played a couple games with it previously, but really weren't understanding fully how to pilot it. And Chance, being the expert that he is, building the deck, we just wanted to give him some time to come on and really just walk us through games with it.
The idea of the deck is you want to bring up a Pokemon and lock it in the active that they can't attack with. So the main Pokemon we have in the format right now, your Dedenne GX, you have your Crobats, right?
That makes a lot of sense. And I liked what you were saying too about the Munchlax being an ability. You don't have to have it active to use the attack. You can leave some stuff in there, and I can see the synergy right away with, like, you have one Crushing Hammer, which sounds so silly on paper, but it's like, it's just like deny an energy, 50% chance, and hopefully get it back with the Munchlax. Like, they're stalled so much anyway with the Cradilly. You probably have a Doll active, and so just like casually to 25% chance per turn to deny energy is just like the perfect kind of deal. And like the 2 nets, right? It's just nice. I'm excited to see the Munchlax kind of go to work. And I see a lot of cool other cards like that. The Apom in there makes a lot of sense with like the Hand in Denial. I think that's really cool. And the Mawile, right? So if they're holding on to their ability-based Pokemon, those Dedenne and the Crobat and stuff like that, getting them out is really cool. And if you could scroll down like a little bit more, I just want to see like everything else you got going on there. Yeah, for research is nice. I played this deck a little bit, and Dustin, I know you did too, and I think one of the problems we ran into a bit slightly, and kind of why I wanted you to come in and kind of help us out with it a little bit, is it wasn't drawing like if you didn't like get set up, it was like really tough. But with the 4 research in there, I like the way this list looks a lot, and I don't know if you'd be up to anything else you want to say first, and then if you want to get into some games too, because honestly, I just want to see it kind of in action. You got a lot of cool stuff in there.
Yeah, I'll explain a little bit, just because there's a few cards that are not really normally played. So this Cradilly, what it says is your opponent's Pokemon that are affected by a special condition can't retreat. Now, previous to the latest set with Darkness Blaze, this was difficult to make. Have a Pokemon, just have a special condition. But with Yellowhorn, you can now confuse a Pokemon, which now when they're confused, they can no longer retreat. One of the biggest ways that people retreat is with Switch, right? So we play the Omastar to prevent switches and other outs like that. The only way that they have out of the active once you have the lock is a Birdkeeper or Malon-Lana. One thing I want to bring up right now that is just so awesome is this deck doesn't take prizes. So Lieutenant Surge can never play into disrupting you. So they either have to choose to use a Malon-Lana or Birdkeeper on a turn, or they have to use a boss's order. They can never use both. And the reason that's so important is most of the time you're going to have these fossil Pokemon on your bench. Your opponent wants to knock these out. So they'll take a turn to try to boss one of these up and lock it in there, so then they can try to switch out of their active to knock it out. But because you play Birdkeeper in the deck, you can just bring that fossil Pokemon back to the bench and stop them from taking that knockout. And we play other walls to prevent something like that. We play the Lily's Pokédoll, so they are not taking prizes. We play the Bronzong, so fire Pokemon can't do any damage. And then we play the Decidueye, so any GX or V Pokemon can't do any damage as well. We just kind of do any damage, so we just wall with those Pokemon. And then we just play, like you were saying, consistency cards, right? We play the research. I didn't always have the Pokegear, but it's just a great consistency card.
Yeah.
Boss, you got to play boss to bring up the Dedennes and such. Kate is what used to be, we used to have Lusamine in the format, and that's what that Spider Lock deck used, because it could attack. It could just use Lusamine to loop over your Lusamines to get the cards you needed. Now we have to rely on something like Caitlin and Cynthia to get back our bosses, get back the Bird Keepers, and keep that going. If we don't hit the Munchlax. So yeah, I'll get into some games, kind of show how this deck works. This is random 60 cards right now, and I'll kind of show what it looks like in play. I never have played Belelba in this deck. I wanted it to be post-rotation ready, and not have to rely on the Belelba and then fall apart once that format was over. So I've been able to win games by milling my opponent out just fine without using Belelba, and Apom, runs a big part in that. I really like this hand outside because we have everything we need to get the Decidueye right out. So I'm actually gonna grab the bird.
Did you ever win shard the Snom because you bird keeper?
You know, I actually beat Mad Party once by using the wind charm multiple times.
Jeez. No, please.
Yeah. Oh
Okay,
my
so-
god. Yeah.
Jeez,
Windcharm
please.
Som there would have been interesting.
Good players would know. I think that he should just, if he wants to keep the game progressing, he shouldn't start burning through stuff. Yeah, he should just attack.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
just take the flip, and like it's not like you're doing damage that the 30 would be relevant. Munchlax has free retreat. My goodness. Look at
Yeah.
that boy.
That's
no
so
idea.
busted.
So at this point, I am gonna bring up the Decidueye. And again, we're just gonna try to
See now
There we
now
go.
do you want the doll because he could Fion your Munchlax active.
That's okay. That's why I left the calm, is so I can grab my other Munchlax if need be.
That's smart.
Cool. You know it's in the deck for sure.
There's a 10% chance we pressed it.
All right.
We play 2 rods.
Oh,
I'm really not worried. Now he has his bench fully set up. He plays the nets, of course, but if we get that item lock, he's gonna have to keep those Jirachis and the Frostmoss on the bench, and he can't do much about that.
yeah. It looks like his game plan here is to start sniping. I bet.
You know, I am totally okay with a Marnie here.
Did you hit heads on your snack search? I forgot.
I did, so I'm gonna get the Bird Keeper.
Bingo.
And again, our opponent has no idea what we're playing,
They
right?
truly.
And then
That always helps. Great.
and you have that free retreat here. I don't need anything in this hand. I have the Decidueye out. Apom, really, I don't need because he's already burned through so much of his deck. I really just want to set up at this point. I'm going to take a look at my deck, but I'm going to end up researching.
Cool. Yeah. Is there anything you could thin the Bronzor or the Bronzong or something just so you
Exactly. Yep. So we see here I have 2 of my Lileeps. I got 2 of my Cordelias. Those are important. I do have the Munchlax. Have the Omastar line. We got Hammers. Yeah, I mean we've got our 2 bosses.
Oh, your Yellhorn.
Best case-
too.
Yeah, we got
get this.
we got plenty of Yellhorn. So we're just kind of chilling. That's the cool thing with this deck. You know, you're playing control. You have everything you're doing. A lot of the time with this deck, you're kind of floating.
Yeah. And we
Right.
get the
So
stadium.
now we have the stadium. So we're gonna nav just to try to thin our deck a little bit. We have the other one in hand. And at this point, we're just gonna bring out those Pokemon.
And one of each. Yep.
And
It's unfortunate to not have a draw supporter for the next turn, but I
Right.
mean, again, just being able to pace it slowly.
Right.
If you even had the Cradley in your hand, like you could already Great Catcher,
Exactly.
Cradley, Yell.
Exactly. And a lot of the time, you know, you don't even need to set up the Omastar because people just, you know, get around the Yellhorn. The Omastar is really just to prevent the switch, but once they're done the switches, the Cordelias is all you care about.
For sure. Frank, that was one thing I noticed when you and I had played some games, that you would get the Omastar out, but you had filled your bench in doing so, and you didn't meet the qualification for Omastar to work, so it didn't even matter that it had been out.
So I want to go ahead and I want to grab a few more of these guys because he's going to start, you know, trying to flip his heads, and I don't have the Munchlax to get anything back. So I'm just going to exhaust these. He still has 4 prizes he needs to take.
Quite unfortunate. And that puts him at 1 prize remaining as well. Do you now just net the Lileep? Oh, I guess he has Suicune.
He's Suicune. I think
It does have Suicune.
They can't one-shot. And you
So
could...
he's 2 buffs down.
As soon as he does...
Let's see what we get here. Okay. So we're really dependent on this. Alright, so I really don't want to discard all that Yellhorn and all that. But I
think
can't
you
really
might
bird
have
keep
to,
into the Lily.
right?
So
you can
you have
snack
to.
search stuff back eventually, but I think you're just so reliant on Great Catcher, Yellhorn, Research, hit the Cradilly, Reset Stamp maybe. Like there's so many pieces that you need, but you can always like recover everything else, right?
Exactly. So
That's terrible.
bring up that. I'm gonna go ahead and Yellhorn that, and then we're just gonna because we do want the Credility. We want to lock him. If we can. All right.
Hey.
So we have the lock, but the thing is, if he just has switch, he has a way out of that.
You can check
But
his
it does
hammer for a
require
while.
him. We could use Mawile and force the hand, so that way he could never put down the Suicune, possibly.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool. Let's give it a try.
Let's see what they're cooking with.
All right. So we have a Keldeo, we have a Jirachi, and we have a Snom. I would like to put down the Keldeo because he has nets.
Yep.
So
That makes sense.
there we go.
What was the rest? I was gonna say, wait, look at the rest of his hand first.
It had instant, a water, a research.
Okay, so no
Like he-
boss or anything like that.
Nope.
And so you can get out the Omanite and hit the Omastar for next turn.
I
Omanite.
can't. He knocked out both Omanite.
Oh shucks.
Yeah. This game might be a scrap, but we'll see. He's got 16 cards left. We might be able to just play around everything. But let's take a look at our own deck. So we have another Lileep. We have the 2 Munchlax. We got the hammers. We do have the boss. So we're really relying on that Munchlax to get back Rod, so we can put in the Omanites.
You need the Munchlax all the time, and it stinks when you don't have it for any amount of turns.
I mean,
then you are just passive.
Yeah, most of the time I do have the Munchlax, so they're not sniping the bench.
Yeah, exactly. They're not going to boss up the Munchlax typically, so this is a unique. I agree. How many switch are in his discard? I wonder how many.
He's got 1 switch. I mean,
they probably play at least what?
I would say 4, right? He plays Jirachi, so there's no reason. Okay, so research is really great here because if he doesn't get what he needs, like again, he's just discarding his deck. Like he's just burned through so much at this point.
He did
get the switch, and then but again, he does not get the knockout next turn, so we could force him to have another switch or energies. He
Keldeo has a
6. He's 8 energy down. The Keldeo has 2 retreat. So bossing at this point might be the optimal play.
If he has boss,
if he can't retreat it out, then we get to research. We are all Yellhorns down.
Yeah. He just needs like switch boss if you do the boss play. Research lets you like get Munchlax and maybe try and mount to come back that way. But then he just needs boss. He doesn't even need the switch. So
and then we're down. Our boss. I would like to see where this goes. Right, he's still not doing any. Oh, you know what?
The Keldeo, I mean, the Keldeo goes through the Decidueye, but I don't think he has enough energy.
It does. Right, exactly. So
insane how this. Yeah, that Mawile.
Right, so we've got that now, and then we'll see if we hit heads on this. And if he's got nothing next turn, this is game.
And that's game.
And this is exactly what this deck does, right? He's got 1 prize left. It comes down to the Buzzy Beater, but you see this a lot with control decks. But the nice thing with this is I don't have to continue to loop 4 cards into my deck and remember those same cards and do the same sequencing. I literally can now just bring this up. I just Yellhorn. He can't retreat. He can't use switches. And now I get to just use Munchlax. And if I hit it, cool. I'm going to go for whatever I want. Like, I'll grab boss.
Just play worst case scenario.
So worst case scenario, right? He has Malonana and boss. So I'm
if he has
going to go.
Actually, Munchlax. So if he has the card he needs, he just wins. So I don't think there's really anything that you can do.
Yeah, and that's kind of what just happens. Like I can just keep putting cards back on top of my deck, and then if he's got it, he's got it. If not,
I would say just grab the scoop up net, and then you can scoop up net the Munchlax. Then there's nothing you can do.
That's what it be. That's what it be. Because that's his out. Like if he has them out.
Actually, I want to build up my deck a little bit here. But yeah, absolutely. Let's just go for that. You know, he's got 3 cards left in deck.
Yeah.
All the time you see your opponent start to Marnie here, and there it is.
Yeah, nice.
Wow. I did not think you were gonna win that at all.
That was like, really impressive. Yeah.
That's crazy, man. This deck is strange. Like how it just kind of works.
We didn't even get to see the Crushing Hammer in play. The Hammer is great against the ADP to get rid of, and then use Munchlax to you just keep discarding. There.
Oh, okay.
Alteration that they, tried to force on you. We never saw the Apom come into play. This is really big when opponents set up big hands and play Marnies. The great thing with this deck is, Marnie is the shuffle draw in this format. There is no more Judge. There is no more Cynthia. So Marnie does nothing. It doesn't help the opponent. It just stalls them out a little bit. Apom just accelerates the game. If you're in a timed game, Apom is discarding a ton of cards from their hand and forcing the Marnie to be a little less effective because they're not getting back as many cards. And
yeah. For the decking.
I've teched in previous. I've used the Drillbur. I've used the Bunnelby to discard their deck slowly, but none of that worked as well as having the Decidueye in the active and the Bronzong and the Dolls. Sometimes I'm just left with a Munchlax in the active and then 2 fossils on the bench because their bench is also only 3 Pokemon and 1 in the active.
It is wild to me that you had such a good time against Blacephalon and never even got the Bronzong out. So it begs the question, like, is Bronzong just for fire decks that don't play an answer to it? And then, like,
yeah, so... Right, so the way I look at this deck is, wow, this is great against decks that bench, which most decks in the format do. The type of deck that doesn't bench most Pokemon is what? Your greens. Deck? Yeah, exactly, your greens deck. So this deck has quite a tough time against your green deck because they don't play enough Pokemon. Bronzong can put in a lot of work because you don't necessarily need this to prevent you the whole time. You just need it enough to have them burn their switches, and then you can lock a Volcanion, or not a Volcanion, a Senti-Scorch in the active, and have Decidueye in the active, and then they can never attack around it. So again, it's a stall method. Your opponent's like, oh, okay, this is a stall. I need to grab my Cramorant. I need to grab my something non-fire. But really, you're just trying to lock whatever in the active that they can't attack with or do damage with.
Could you, and I don't know if we're talking about deck list edits right now, but I guess we may as well. Can you cut a candy? Like, have you found yourself needing all 3?
So I didn't even play Decidueye originally in this deck. It was not actually my original thought. But when my friend Matt actually was talking about the Spider Lock. The Arachnid's gone, Lucamine's gone, Rainbow's gone. We were looking at all these things that were gone, and I'm like, but this played Alolan Ninetales, which was to prevent GX attacks, just like Hoopa, and we're like, dude, Decidueye is so good. So we threw in the Decidueye. Looking at the future for this deck, right? I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, but there's an Altaria that's coming out that's a stage 1 that does the same thing that Decidueye does. Frank, you're muted.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. No, another thing that's coming out is the Obstagoon. Putting your opponent to 4 cards in hand completely gets rid of your reason to need Apom in the deck, right? So you can replace that if you want to make discard down to 4 cards instead of 5 cards. I've played the Persian in the deck to discard them down to 4 and look at their hand and discard specifically. The Apom was mostly in this deck when Mallow and Lana and Birdkeepers were big, so I could hopefully hit one of those to get rid of. But we're not seeing a lot of Mallow and Lana and Birdkeeper in the format right now because Vikavolt not, all too big.
This is crazy. What does Mawil's GX attack do?
Your opponent reveals their hand, discard all support.
Could you ever see yourself like playing a Metal Energy? Like if like the only answer them breaking the lock is having these special supporters. If they have this big hit, and you could just like Mawile GX and like, oh, there it is. There's your 1 mana Lana.
Yeah, you totally could. I mean, a lot of decks are playing Viridian 4. You play the ordinary rods, so you can get back here as well, which is pretty cool. A lot of times I actually find myself to, put that, force the Dedenes and stuff out of their hand, but I actually bring it up into the active and I put a recycle on it and let them attack into it as kind of a stall technique, and then I can retreat out of it if I need to, and then let them kill it, and then I can rot it back in and actually use
it again.
If I don't get the lock with the Omastar, if they didn't bench enough. So Mawile is really powerful in this deck. I was talking to Frank about a card that's going to be coming out, a Rotom card that allows you to look at your opponent's hand and then look at their top deck, which is similar to our stadium we have, Lavender Town, right now. The thing with Lavender Town is they get to look at your hand too. I don't want my opponent knowing my hand. With all of the crazy spice that's in this deck, I don't want them seeing that. So that new item will be really cool to be able to look at their hand and kind of be like, okay, should I use Mawile here or not? Right? Kind of like Pokepuff in Expanded, which I think this deck could totally be altered into an Expanded deck. I'm just saying. But that's, a topic for a different day.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Well, dude, thanks so much for like coming and sharing both these decks with us and kind of walking us through it a little bit. Do you have any like anything you want to shout out to before I forget?
No, I mean, honestly, I have to shout you guys out for what you guys are doing. Your new team, it has the insight and the things that I think Pokemon has needed for a long time, right? You put these players together that own unique stuff in their arsenal, right? Like there's creativity, there's deck builders, there's people who commentated, and your hype people. Like you have all these different players, kind of like football team and basketball team and stuff like that. And I think this is the first time we're seeing this. And I mean, the fact that you guys even had me on this channel to express these decks, someone who I've played competitive for last 3 years or so. Never broke top 32, but had some decent regional runs. Just express what I've been tinkering with and where I think the format's going and stuff, and even seeing any good out of it is just, it's so cool. And I can't wait to see where your team goes in the future, especially when we start actually getting events back and stuff like that. Frank, you've been known to have a spicy deck here or two, and give that list off to some regional winners and such. So I'm definitely excited, and any insight that I can provide in the future, I'm more than happy.